Brum, 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 splush. Brum. All right, Susan, let's get this load on the road before the government shuts us down again. Also, Mum says don't drive the truck standing up. Oh, sorry, Sonny Jim, it's just I can't sit down in the small truck. Also, we can't go anywhere. The government shut us down already. They did it last night. They said, ooh, immediate effect. What are you talking about? This is a democracy. It's not immediate effect until it's been gazetted. So there, let's get the show on the road. No, Sonny Jim, but that's the thing. Don't you see, last night the government had an entire clan of ninja wizard lawyers. It's all gazetted immediately. Oh, bugger. Oh, hey Kiddio kids, I didn't see you there, but I'm so glad you joined us because today we're going to be talking about the proper value of a bottle of wine. And you might say, oh hun, but we can't even buy wine. Why do we care what it costs? To which I'd say, correct. You can't buy wine, but that doesn't mean there aren't some very exciting wines being released. One of them being this Vondeling Barrel-Fermented Merlot. Now, Vondeling, an estate in the Voor-Paardeberg, have long had a Petit Rouge Merlot wine, which is one of their entry-level wines. I think this is one of the best value red wines in the entire country. Now, this goes for 70 Rand a bottle. So if I'm saying that a Merlot at 70 Rand a bottle is one of the best value wines in the country, what on earth are they doing releasing a Merlot for 150 Rand? How could it possibly be good value? Well, that's exactly what we want to explore. Throughout history, people have died needlessly in the heated debate over what constitutes a proper bottle of wine. What is the value of a proper bottle of wine? And mostly people are dying because there are binary thinkers who think that there is only one correct way to assess the value of a bottle of wine. It's a foolproof technique. Accountants are actually best at this, God bless them, because they kind of feel like if they've been to Builder's Warehouse in the last 6 weeks and still have a calculator Casio watch, then they can unravel the secret operations of any business, right? Because if you know what the parts cost, then surely you can understand the business at its core. Now, I'd like to show how extremely absurd that reductionist thinking is, which I'll do later on. But just so we don't lose binary thinkers when we move on to more sophisticated equations, I want to start with exactly that. What are the costs that go into making a bottle of wine? Now, I mean, first up, if we really want to go back to basics, you have to ask, well, why even plant grapes in the first place? Why not plant Clemengold? A wine farmer or grape farmer might say, I can get 150,000 Rand revenue from my hectare of soil. And he's very happy with that until his neighbor comes from next door and says, I'm getting $1 million for my Clemengold. You have to really love grapes in order to take the choice that renders less than 12% of the profit of the other options available. But perhaps the farmer says to himself, but I'm not just a fruit farmer. I want to make wine, and there's plenty of money to be made from wine. So I'm going to stick with my grapes. Well, then we have to go, okay, but are all hectares of land the same, even amongst grape farmers? I mean, are we going to have, say, Jürgen Goos's old vines in the Swartland that yield for us maybe 2 tons of fruit per hectare? Are we happy with that? Or really, do we want a delightfully hot plot of commercially farmed land in Namaqualand that yields 30 tons? Perhaps that's a better number. If we just get our accountant to check the numbers on his Casio, I'm sure we'll see that 30 tons per hectare will yield a delightful business. At this point, there's a guy in the corner with a beard and wearing sackcloth undies, and he says, but hang on, fellas, I'm not sure I want to make Namakwa wine necessarily. I mean, I've heard of entire villages that have gone blind making that stuff. Can't we make nice wine? Can't we make like a Mevrouw Kirsten Shannon? I'm going to give Eben Sadi a call and see what he has to say. Yo, Eben, how's it? Thanks for taking my call. Listen, I want to make nice wine. So can you get me 30 tons per hectare on the kind of fruit you use in Mevrouw Kirsten? Not quite. What do you mean? Oh, you get 300 tons, 300 kgs. You get 300 kgs per hectare. That's literally 1% of 30 tons. Eben, you know, are you using your watch? That means it's 100 times more expensive to farm fruit for a Mevrouw Kirsten than it might be to farm fruit for a Namakwa wine. And then perhaps you think to yourself, well, what I'll do is I'll cut some costs here and there. We'll make it into a box wine. Who cares about a slightly lower yield? At least we'll save prices on packaging. But in a parallel universe and on the other side of the province, Ibn Saadi might be facing this really tough decision. Should I or should I not put Mevrouw into a box? And he decides, you know what? I'm actually going to stick with the bottle. But now he has another decision to make. Does he choose a bottle like this, which might cost R5 a unit? Or does he import a big, fancy, heavy bottom glass bottle that could cost as much as R30 a unit? And at this point, you might say, well, if he's going to spend R30 on a bottle, just the glass, then he's an idiot. But when you consider that there's some markets, especially in places like China, where in fact the size and weight of the bottle is almost worth more than the wine inside the bottle, you understand that these decisions are not trivial. It could be the difference between a successful product or not. Now, thankfully, in our parallel universe, Ibn Saadi decided against putting Mevrouw onto the market as a box wine, and he also decided not to go for the cheaper bottle. He went for a delightfully expensive imported bottle. But we can see he had to navigate a swing in price of up to 300% just to the bottle. But now that he's done that, is he going to put a cork in it? And I'm sure you're saying at this point, well, I wish you'd put a cork in it, and that's fair enough. But is he going to go cork or screw cap? If we think about it, an enclosure like this might cost between 50 and 80 cents. A low-end natural cork might cost R5 or R6. An ND Tech cork that has been scanned to make sure that it is cork tape free can cost between R9 and R12. So you're now deciding between 50 cents and R12. That's another massive swing in the cost of your packaging. And all of this makes a difference because you think, screw caps are so simple and they keep the oxygen out, why not use that? And yet we don't like them, do we? Even though New Zealand is trying very hard to tell us that screw caps are the way to go. Little fun fact, 90% of the wines coming out of New Zealand are screw cap. And of course, in amongst all the excitement of fancy scanned TCA-free corks, we forgot to even discuss how we were going to get the juice out of the grapes and into the bottle. Are we going to just use free-run juice to create a gentle volunteer wine? Or are we going to squeeze the bitumen out of the grapes in order to get every last little bit of tannic goodness? And once we've done that, are we going to age it in a barrel? Or are we going to put it in one of the tanks that we got round the back? Bear in mind that a 225-litre barrel might cost as much as €1,000. Get out your Casio watch, fellas. How much is that per bottle? And of course, then we can also begin to discuss the cost of printing labels, but really I think graphic designers should be willing to work for exposure. So we won't go into that. But let's come back here to our Vondeling Barrel-Fermented Merlot and our Petit Rouge Merlot. This is where we need to now move on to the slightly more sophisticated equation, moving beyond the mere cost. Because you never go shopping for a Maserati, or at least try and figure out the price of a Maserati, by looking at the steel commodities index, do you? You don't walk into a Maserati dealership and say, well, the Tata is also made of metal and has tires, so I feel like they are equitable products. No, one is just clearly more pleasing than the other. And so it is even here. And while I still think this is one of the best value rates in the country, this is a more complex wine with more depth, more dynamics. And if you want to go a step up, they've got wines like the Babiana White Blend and Monsonia Red, which are, again, another step up. And what I find so fascinating about their top-tier philosophy range at Vondeling is that winemaker Matt Copeland is not shy about saying they cost more because they are quite literally the best barrels from every vintage. We pick a handful of barrels of all the hundreds of thousands of barrels or thousands of barrels, and the very best ones are the ones that we sell for more. Is that so wrong? I feel like some people really think that it is. So, in conclusion, a very unhelpful and obtuse man once said, well, a bottle of wine is worth whatever you pay for it. But the problem with that is that us as humans, we kind of have already decided what bracket we fall into. We already know what we are willing or aren't willing to pay for a bottle of wine. Now, unless we buy outside of that bracket every now and then, we're never going to be able to get to know ourselves better. That's why I think it really is a fascinating experiment to go and spend 70 Rand on the Petit Rouge and then spend 150 Rand on the barrel-fermented Merlot and drink them alongside one another. Not only will you learn something about winemaking, but you will also learn something about yourself and how you perceive value in a bottle of wine.